Well, welcome again, everyone, this morning. For those of you who joined us in the last few minutes, I'm Reverend Michael Spear, and I'm just thrilled to be with you this morning and everyone out in our online audience. So, Mary Beth and I are doing a 3-week series that we started last week, and if you weren't here or didn't hear it, that's absolutely fine. You can go back and listen if you'd like, but you're going to be right on page with us, because up here on the screen, you'll see the 3 things that we're covering in this series are actually based on a vision statement from a very good friend and mentor and teacher of ours, Dr. James Mellon, now at the Global Truth Center in Los Angeles. As well as there's a Unity Church in, I think it's in Phoenix, in Arizona somewhere. I forget which town it is, but it has that same mission statement. But it's so powerful. It has so much to it. We could spend a year talking about this, but we're going to talk about the 3 parts, and we started last week. Today we're talking about the next part, which I'll get to in a moment. Last week was love only, which was right on the coattails of our wonderful Enoch, who is here this morning, who 2 weeks ago did that wonderful service. Thank you, Enoch. I just want to applaud you in person. Love only is just so powerful, because what else is there really at the end of the day? And in this day, in this country, in this planet, what more could we need? What more do we need more of, really, than love, right? And it guides us through everything we are. God is love. We hear that all the time. So it's embodying and important, this idea of love only. For me, sometimes it's so easy to forget about this and when I've listened to the news or I see things going on the planet. But this all ties together about walking around in a loving way within our lives, a loving consciousness. And that second one that we're going to be talking about today, forgive everything. And then finally next week we're going to be talking about remembering who I am. So to start us off on this journey this morning, today's title for the talk is Forgive Everything? Everything? Really? Do you mean that, Michael? Yes, that is the work. And Reverend Mary Beth is going to talk to us about that this morning.
Good morning. Before I get into this, I'd like you, if you would, please, just turn to someone and say, welcome, namaste, and I'm so glad you're here this morning. Yeah, doesn't that feel good? You know, in spiritual community, we grow up all over each other. So there you go. So let's do some growing up today. Are you good for that? I am too. So as Michael said, our message today is the second of the 3 parts that we're talking about, which is a vision statement that was adopted by Reverend Dr. James Mellon, who's one of Michael's and my teachers, and he is growing a beautiful work in California called the Global Truth Center. And the second idea of the 3 parts of a vision statement. Remember, vision statements are something you never arrive at. They're aspirational. They're like the pull of the more that you're always being pulled further and further toward. And at some point, not too long after James had adopted this vision statement for his center, and he himself has a bedrock belief in his heart that life is always happening perfectly for him. And somewhere in the midst of this, his daughter, who was a twin, was killed by a drunk driver. So this was years ago, and he is still doing a lot of work around this forgive everything. He's the first to tell you that. But it has carried him through a lot, and Nora resides with him each and every day of his life. So today is going to be about talking about not how to forgive, because I have about 20 minutes. It's not going to work. It's not check it off, one and done. Okay, we can do that. What we're going to talk about is why we forgive. And I think is when we really are clear about that, and I've gotten clearer and clearer myself, even just getting ready. Just so you know, The talk that I give you is the one I need to hear. So if I can prepare on what I need to hear, I think you'll appreciate it, because it's kind of like we got one mind here, right? That's what we teach here. There's one mind, one power, and one presence, and we are it. So let's go ahead, and I have an image I'd like to put up here. So I don't normally watch news in the evening these days. Anybody else kind of shrunk the amount of time you spend watching, ABC or whatever at 5:30? But the other night I was cooking dinner for the grandkids Friday night, and so I decided to watch the news. And they had a news article about a couple named Regina and Chuck Johnson. So last year, March 3rd, 2024 to be exact, was an ordinary day for Regina and Chuck Johnson, until it wasn't. Chuck went out for a ride on his e-bike while his wife was doing whatever. And while he was out, he was struck by a car whose driver had passed out behind the wheel. Chuck's injuries were critical, and he passed away 7 days later. The driver of the car was someone named Joseph Tillman. He was a 24-year-old boy man whose young life was also being altered on that March evening. Joe had made some really bad choices that night, and he was intoxicated when he passed out at the wheel of his car. On the image, you'll see Joe in court because his court case came up this past week, or finished up. And during that period, Joe pled guilty to the charges related to Chuck Johnson's death. His trial ended this week with a guilty verdict, and his sentence includes prison time and a very mandatory long-standing rehab program. Joe's defense lawyer, Paul Ganahani, said, "Joe's changed his way of life and seems like he is on a trajectory to continue to move forward with his life in a positive way." But the reason that they were on the news was not this part. It's the part that's in this image in the next slide. In a stunning courtroom moment that put it on the evening news, Regina Johnson forgave her husband's killer and offered him a hug. Look at the faces on the people behind them. Regina said, "Joey doesn't know how much God loves him." And as she hugged Joe, she said, "God told me that he needed a mom hug." Joey needs healing of things in his past, as we all do, she said, and that is our heart and prayer. Joe Tillman, 25-year-old now, Joe Tillman, fell in her arms and he wept as he whispered to Regina over and over, "I'm so sorry. I am so sorry." Cherokee County Superior Judge Tony Baker said in a shock, "I don't think I've ever seen the wife of a victim hug a defendant after they'd killed somebody." This reminded me of a quote by Mark Twain that many of you probably heard, which is, forgiveness is the fragrance that the violet sheds on the heel that crushed it. So today we're talking about forgiving, and here's this aspirational idea of forgive everything. And we have to say, everything? How in God's name do we forgive everything? So what I know is I have spent so much time reading about forgiveness. Michael and I have been in ministry now, really doing some form of either pulpit ministry for 15 years, and then 10 years after that doing a ministry without walls. We've done a lot of forgiveness workshops, a lot of things that we have done. We've taken them, we've given them, we've studied them. You did one beautifully a couple of weeks ago here with Enoch. It's just that there's a point where we just keep going. And why we keep going is really important. Because there's thousands of books that have been written about forgiveness. There's thousands of teachers out there, speakers, religious adherents, encouraging forgiveness because of this reason. Nothing, absolutely nothing, is more important than your desire to be free. This desire is the strongest motivation that exists, and it is the reason that we do forgiveness. On this slide is an interesting couple of definitions you may not have ever really thought about. I'm sharing these from a wonderful book. I have to do a shout out of somebody I'm very proud of. Michael and I went to ministerial school, and we've been peers of Reverend Dr. Michelle Wadley for many, many years. Michelle wrote an amazing book. She's got another one out about shadow work, and the book is called Forgiveness, A Path, A Promise, A Way of Life. And while I was preparing this talk and working on it this weekend, I was looking at Facebook, and Centers for Spiritual Living, the affiliated group of religious scientists, are all up in Canada having their annual retreat. And Michelle was being awarded an art award by her organization for all the work she's done and published and the work she's doing in the world. But Michelle came up with this idea of forgiveness, the conscious decision to value peace of mind and heart over any righteousness. Take that in, that righteousness. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But notice the first three words, the conscious decision. And then she says forgiveness muscle, because she teaches forgiveness. She said it's the habits and practices that lead to our freedom. It is that which has you feeling strong and with a sense of conviction. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm a Wayne Dyer kind of junkie. And, he has been off this plane for quite a while, but I listen to Wayne Dyer a lot on YouTube when I'm cleaning up in the morning. And I've heard his stories over and over, and I just love Wayne Dyer's stories. He was a real prophet on our planet. And the amazing thing about Wayne Dyer is that he was one of three boys that were abandoned by Melvin Lyle Dyer, who was an absolute unhealed drunk. He was a nasty man. He abandoned the family when these kids were under 5 years old, never turned around, never met Wayne, didn't even mention to his other wives that Wayne existed. In fact, Wayne even said that his mother conceived Wayne when she was raped by her father, Wayne's dad. But Wayne has gone on and done some amazing forgiveness that he talks about. Magnificent story about the work that he did, but he had really hit the ground where he was pretty low by the time he actually did his work around forgiving his father. Actually visited his grave with the intention of peeing on it. But it was in front of his grave that he had his epiphany, his road to Damascus, if you will, where he became changed person, where he realized that his work was to forgive this person, not knowing why his dad had done what he'd done, but knowing that until he forgave himself and forgave his father, he would never be free. The amazing thing about that is it turned his whole life and his whole ministry around, and a lot of what Wayne Dyer's work has been built on is the foundation of the hard work he did to forgive Melvin Lyle Dyer. And Wayne would tell you over and over and over again that he truly believes that the reason he was on this plane was to teach the forgiveness that he was given the blessing of, and that this man was his greatest teacher. You don't get there in one weekend workshop, do you? So the idea here, one of the whys of why we forgive, is it's not about them. Forgiveness is never about them. Forgiveness always is about us. It's like forgiving and forgiving. Because we don't have to, forgiveness is not condoning, right? I mean, I think a lot of you, if I ask for a show of hands, which I'm not, but if I asked you for a show of hands, I can imagine that almost every hand, and probably every hand in this room, would go up if I said, how many of you have done some sort of processing around forgiveness? Because we've all introduced it, right? We've all done the work. We are doing the work, but the key to this is it's not about just doing the work, it's about the life that it changes and continues to change every time we look under a rock in our life and go, oh my God, I got more work to do. So on the slide, forgiving is not forgetting. It is letting go of the hurt. Instead of thinking of it as an eraser to wipe another person's slate clean, or a gavel that you pound to pronounce someone not guilty, think of it as a pair of scissors that you can use to cut the strings of resentment that bind you to a problem or past hurt. By releasing resentment, you set yourself free. I found that quote in my Al-Anon reader because I am a 12-stepper and proud of it, and thank you. And the thing about Al-Anon, why do we use first names and why don't we want people to know? Because before we begin to take the path of healing, we feel shame. And shame is universal. If you've ever felt shame or you feel shame somewhere in your life, you're in good company. The whole world feels shame at some point. Brene Brown, who I know a lot of you are Brene Browners, Brene Brown does all the research. And out of the research, she came up with a definition for the word shame. And her definition of the word shame is fear of disconnection. And she said excruciating vulnerability. So we're going to talk about that because one of the things, and we'll look at the slide here now, in addition to the love only, forgive everything, and remember who you are, the three parts that Michael and I are speaking about these 3 weeks in this series. We're also overlaying them with the aspects that Brene Brown, through her research, discerned to be the qualities that what she refers to as wholehearted people have in common. And she, through the research, came up with the realization that there are actually 3 aspects to that really define living wholeheartedly. We talked about the first one last week, which is courage, telling your story from your whole heart. And it all builds on that because, in order to go to the next one, which is compassion, that takes courage. It really takes courage to be compassionate. And it takes a lot of courage to be self-compassionate. Because when we're in our shame, we don't feel compassionate toward ourselves. And so it's really hard to feel compassionate toward other people, right? Because we can't give people what we don't have. So compassion in her work, which I think is wonderful, and on the slide is her definition of compassion. I love this. This is so cool. The slides come together. I'm going, oh God, I hope that slide behind us and what I meant to have there. Thanks, guys. Our tech team is so great. Can you guys give a shout out to our So Brene Brown's word for compassion is from the Latin, pati and cum, which means to suffer with. And she says, in cultivating compassion, we draw from the wholeness of our experience, our suffering, our empathy, as well as our cruelty and our terror, because there's one of us here having all the aspects of life. And compassion is not a relationship between the healer and the wounded. It's a relationship between equals. No greater than, less than in that. And compassion becomes real when we recognize our shared humanity. We're going to talk about that next week because the other aspect, of course, is connection. And on this slide, the better we are at accepting ourselves and others, the more compassionate we can become. The research has taught us that if we really want to practice compassion, we have to start by setting boundaries and holding people accountable for their behavior. I got to tell you, when I read Gifts of Imperfection, which if you have never read this book, I highly recommend. It's an old book. A lot of you guys have seen this book, right? This was kind of like the genesis of Brene Brown's work that people became aware of her. And in her work, the 3 aspects of wholehearted living, courage, compassion, and connection, that second one, compassion, really struck home for me because what she brought into this is we cannot be compassionate and resentful at the same time. This has really got some huge implications, and if you want to take some homework today, go home and think about this. Because how can I be kind and compassionate to you and have my heart be open to you when I have a wreck of evidence about you? And the thing about compassion and the release of resentment is it's all about us. Because if I am not compassionate with you and I'm resenting you, I bet you it's because I haven't been clear with you about how to treat me. And if I don't know how to treat me because I'm all in my shame and I don't deserve and all that, then how the heck can I teach you how to treat me because I don't even know how to treat me? Right? So this is an inside job. This is about being willing to look in my heart and to discern how do I want to be treated. And the more I feel connected with the source, with you, with some community, with something, it starts to grow me up so that I can feel like I am worthy enough to teach you how to treat me, to hold you accountable in it, and to guide you when you stumble. Because, have you ever noticed when you don't teach people how to treat you, they don't know how to do it, so they got to make it up. And they don't know you, so they won't know how to do it. And they're going to screw it up, and they go, there it is, see? And then you get back into your resentment. Resentment, if you hyphenate that word, resentment is rescinding the upset. You keep rescinding it. Wayne Dyer makes an amazing statement. He says, you never die from a snake bite, but you die from the venom of the snake bite. So it's never about the incident. It's about what we do with it. Our story around what happened. Our misperception around what happened. And even if the other person intended to hurt us, it's up to us to not take it. And it's up to us to keep our hearts open so that we don't keep attracting it. I thought about Regina and Joey. And I realized, I thought, what? We're all in this together. Quantum physics is teaching us entanglement, right? That we're all entangled with each other. Regina and Joey and her husband were all in an entanglement, some kind of cosmic entanglement that we cannot at a human level understand. But Regina had to have within herself the compassion to forgive him. And in so doing, Regina's whole trajectory of the rest of her life is going to be different than if she had held her heart hard. And the other part of that is Joey had to be willing to be forgiven, or he could not have attracted it. So again, we're all kind of in this together. Where am I on slides? Let's see, there we are. Okay. Okay, there we go. Okay, that's the way you were not put on this earth to suffer, right? Yeah, that's the one. Okay. So you were not put on this earth to suffer. You deserve to be free. I deserve to be free. You deserve to know you are worthy. I deserve to know that I'm worthy. We deserve to remember that we are gifts of this great human family. The sooner we each remember this and act from this place, the more we will exude it and give permission for others around us to embrace their own permission. One dark room, walk in a dark room, light one light, that room is no longer dark. It's like about being the light. Even though we sometimes feel the darkness, even though we sometimes want to blame. Brene Brown speaks about this idea. She says, we live in a blame culture. We want to know whose blame it is, whose fault it is, and how are they going to pay? Anybody relate to this? What would our work and our lives and our homes look like if we blamed less but had more respect for boundaries? The definition she gives of the word blame, a way to discharge my own pain and discomfort. It's all about us. So, we may be powerless over our circumstances, in our bodies, in our work, in our relationships to some degree, in our relationships to our country right now. I know there's so much energy around that. And it's so hard sometimes to keep our hearts open when we see things being done before our very eyes that feel so diametrically opposed to what we believe in. And yet, what the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's not enough of, right? And so for us, it's about let peace begin and let it begin with us. There's a number in the Bible that's the most oft used number in the Bible, 494 times, the number 7. The number 7 is, in metaphysical terms, the number of perfection. And if you remember, Jesus said, how many times do we have to forgive? 70 times 7, which means what? Until you're done. Michael and I had a moment that kicked up just this last week where we were talking to somebody, and I don't remember how it came about, but all of a sudden the issue came up about 2 years ago where we had appealed property taxes, I think it was. And we had actually asked for a hearing, and we were granted a hearing. I'm not going to tell the whole story about this, but we were given a hearing on Zoom with 3 people who were in charge. And they came on late, and it was like the jury was over before we'd been able to present our case. And it was not even done in a kind or loving way. It was done in a way with, almost placating us, making us feel somewhat diminished. And we hung up with such a bad taste in our mouth about it. Well, that rose up again this week. Not that we reopened the appeal, but we reopened the injury. And I started to go there, and I went, oh, here it is. 70 times 7. It's here to be healed, because that memory has energy, and we're working with energy. We're working with vibration. And as long as that thing was vibrating somewhere in my body, it's like toxin. That old idea about resenting other people is about, taking poison and wanting them to die. It does nothing to the other person. It does everything to us. So why do we forgive? So that we can be free. Free and freer and freer. And then free to share that with other people, even though people may think we're crazy. So as I'm ending up, I want to share a story that I heard. I had some good material. It's like Spirit's in stuff, man. It's really cool during the week. So this one came from one of our dear friends, David Alt. He's a magnificent metaphysician and a wonderful musician. And he told this story on Facebook, and I wanted to share it with you. It's about how we keep our hearts and our minds and our desire to just be the contribution. He wrote, "Yesterday I stopped by a national paint store chain to pick up a couple of gallons of stain for my wooden fence. One of the employees behind the counter said, 'Are you in a hurry for this?' And David said, 'Well, not really. The person who's doing the spraying is just waiting to let me know when we're ready to do it.' And the clerk said, 'Well, here's the deal. Starting tomorrow, everything will be marked down 40%. And so he said, 'You'll save a lot of money if you wait until then.' So David said, 'Wow, heads up.' And then he said, 'Well, tomorrow's Friday, right?' And the clerk said, 'Yeah.' And David said, 'Well, what's really funny about Fridays? Somehow there's always a mysterious box of donuts that appears in my car. That could happen again tomorrow. Hey, do you like donuts?' And the clerk laughed. He goes, 'Yeah.' And he goes, 'Well, what kind do you like?' He goes, 'I'm not picky.' And so there's David's car seat the next morning. That morning, he returned for the stain with that mysterious, magical box of donuts in hand. And David went on to write, small gestures matter. Kindness matters. Joy, even now, isn't sacrilegious. It is sacrament. I remember once reading something like, 'You can't get to your dream from your pain. You get there from your vision.' I know you dream of peace just like I do. And I know you feel helpless at times, just like I do. I didn't expect good in a literal sense when I walked into that door of the paint store, but I continue to hold expectancy in my heart as much as possible. I believe it isn't a desperate gesture, but a grand one, perhaps the only one that really matters. As the news of the world feels heavier and heavier each day, may we hold the expectancy of good in our hearts, and just as importantly, be willing to give it freely and thoughtfully and unexpectedly, because what we appreciate appreciates. So see the good, be the good. It really is one of the most powerful things that we can do. A Course in Miracles, I know a lot of you are familiar with, is actually one of thousands of books on how to do the forgiveness work. It has wonderful aphorisms, and one of them is so beautiful. It says, "Spirit am I, free of all limits, safe and healed and whole. Spirit am I, free to forgive and free to save the world. Spirit am I." So you can take those words into your heart, and as we prepare for meditation, I'm going to read some words out of Michelle Wadley's book, which I think are so beautiful and comforting. Let these go right straight to your soul. And I'm going to put these in the first person so that they are your words to yourself. May my heart feel safe and to feel, to open and to heal. May my desire for freedom outweigh my reasons to be angry or resentful. May I forgive myself and all others for anything and everything that could hinder my natural state of joy. May all people have safe passage through my heart and my mind. May the presence of God bring me peace now and forevermore. May my motivation to heal give me the strength that I need to let go. And may my body, mind, and soul be healed through the truth being revealed. So it is. And now, Michael.
I invite you to join me in meditation. We're going to start out with some words and just take them in your heart, and then we're going to transition right into a beautiful song by Reverend Dr. David Alt. So knowing right now that there is only one in this room, there's only one in this universe, one mind, one God, one power, one universal intelligence that is everywhere present. So know this for yourself as I know it for myself, that right now I know that I am present as an integral, key part of this universe, because I am this presence and expression. I am a unique, individualized expression of it. Knowing this, I know that I truly do make a difference. I make a difference in everything going on in this world. Starting right here and now with me, and in the world surrounding me. And I know that it reverberates out throughout this entire planet. As I move into this space of this knowingness within myself, I know that I'm willing to love only everything around me, starting with myself. And I'm willing to forgive everything. Willing meaning that whether I know how to do that or not, and whether I may have resistances, which I know in certain areas of my life do come up, I am willing to be open to let these walls break down, these walls of resistance. I'm willing to be open to forgive. I'm willing to be open to let greater love into my life and expand it out to those around me. Because I know that truly, spirit am I. Please continue to take these words in through Reverend Dr. David Alt.
Spirit am I, free of all limits, safe and healed and whole. Spirit am I, free to forgive and free to save the world. Spirit am I, Spirit am I, free of all limits, safe and healed and whole. to save the world. Spirit am I, Spirit am I, free of all limits, safe and healed and whole. Spirit am I, free to forgive and free to save the world. Spirit am I, Spirit am I, free of all limits, safe and healed and whole. Spirit am I, free to forgive and free to save the world. Spirit am I, Spirit am I, free of all limits, safe and healed and whole. Spirit am I, free to forgive and free to save the world.
I invite you just to take a nice deep breath and slowly, as you're ready, feel the ground under your feet and just open your eyes and rejoin us in the room. Okay. Welcome back from that journey.